and the people who love them.
Hello, my friends. This is Mickey Desai, one of your hosts for The Thing About Cars. Today on the phone, we've got Ben. Ben, are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent. And today we're going to interview Zack Miller. Zack is the publisher of Motorbooks. Specifically, is still Motor Groups, isn't it? Motorbooks, isn't that right, Zack?
It's Motorbooks. Yeah, I think that in the very beginning it was called Classic Motorbooks.
Classic Motorbooks. And Motorbooks was recently acquired in 2007 by the Quarto Group, so people can find you that way, right?
Yeah, there's if you go, there's a website called Quarto Knows, and if you went there and then looked for Quarto Drives, that's where you'd find all the transportation books.
Mm-hmm. So you're the publisher for all these really cool books that we've been reviewing on our show for a little bit here. How did you get into the business, first of all?
Kind of a circuitous path, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started my career on the technical side. I worked for 3M, but then I was finishing up at a journalism degree while I was doing that. And Motorbooks was founded in 1965 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And they were looking for an acquisitions editor, and I applied for it, and I didn't get the job. But they hired me to write a book, and so I wrote a book for them, and by the time I finished that, they needed another acquisitions editor, and that time I got invited in.
Very cool. What was that first book?
They used to have a series called the Illustrated Buyer's Guide. So I'd have Illustrated Buyer's Guide to Ferrari, Illustrated Buyer's Guide to Corvette, etc. So I did an Illustrated Buyer's Guide for Vincent motorcycles.
Awesome.
Ben, what do you know about Vincent motorcycles?
Oh, well, they're pretty amazing. They were the fastest bikes produced at the time. They're very legendary. Richard Thompson even wrote a song about them. So,
right.
Yeah, very charismatic, fast British machines.
Are you a motorcycle guy, Ben?
I am, yes.
Yeah, Ben, I love cars, but I really love motorcycles.
I'm into both. You know, it was cars first for me, but I love them both quite a bit now.
We've actually done a short series of episodes called "The Thing About Motorcycles," done under the Thing About Cars labels. But I think that's something we should do yearly at least.
I would encourage that.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, you want to take the next question?
Well, I was just kind of looking at all the titles online, and my God, the variety is just amazing. I think there's something here for everybody. How do you guys do so many different books?
Well, part of the secret is we don't.
All right.
I mean, Motorbooks, Motorbooks has a established program, but when you look at our website, we're also a distributor for other publishers in North America. So, there's the Motorbooks, there's the current titles, there's our backlist, and our backlist is quite deep. We have some titles that have been in continuous print since the 1990s. And a lot of the other titles that are on that list are from our partner publishers. So there's, publishers that we work with from a few from the UK, there's a couple from Italy, some from Germany. So we have having the distribution for those other publishers allows us to increase the breadth of our offering. And that's why we're able to really supply something to scratch just about any automotive itch.
Oh, yeah. I'm just looking at the first page here, and I'm seeing everything from John Deere to building Lego cars on this one page alone. And, yeah, and I don't even know how many pages there are.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, too, with Motorbooks is, we take our transportation remit pretty broadly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
it's not just cars and motorcycles, but it's kind of we like to say anything that has wings, wheels, or floats is
That's
of interest to us. Yeah.
Why that niche, do you suppose? Or is that just simply the way it unfolded?
Well, I think it's kind of historically the way it unfolded. I mean, the Motorbooks was started by a man named Tom Worth in 1965.
Mm-hmm.
He was a British expat, had come to the U.S. I think he was working actually as an insurance salesman initially, but he was a total gearhead. And what he found was that in the U.S., as opposed to his native England, was that there wasn't as much transportation books and magazines as there was in the UK.
I see.
And so on kind of on the side, he started a mail order business, importing books from England and selling them through a small mail order catalog. And then the business just kind of grew from there. So for a long time, they were they were basically a distributor and wholesaler of books. That's how the business started. They had a catalog that, at its apex probably was mailing out, I don't know, I think they were probably mailing out close to 1 million catalogs.
Wow.
And this would have been, probably through the early 90s. They started doing their own publishing, because before they weren't doing any of their own. They were just, procuring and retailing essentially, and also distributing to bookstores and things like that. But then probably like in the late 70s, they started to do just a little publishing of their own. Mm-hmm. And then in the mid 80s, they hired a fellow named Tim Parker from England. And Tim had been, he'd started his book publishing career at Haynes, which I'm sure you've heard of.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And from Haynes, he went to a company called Osprey, which did some amount of transportation publishing, but also quite a bit of military publishing. And then he got poached by Motorbooks and brought stateside. And he was the publisher actually when I started working at Motorbooks. And so it grew. Their publishing really exploded underneath him. And
Mm-hmm.
and like most publishers, I guess the volume of our publishing is kind of expanded and contracted over time, sort of with the publishing industry as a whole. So I mean, it started out as transportation because that's the niche that Tom Worth saw and that he was interested on a personal basis in fulfilling. And as it turns out, and is not a secret to you guys, is there's a lot of gearheads and a lot of enthusiasts out there, and in terms of providing them focused books and them being able to find you to procure those books, it's a pretty sensible niche. I think if you're in this world, it makes sense. And if you're not in this world, it leaves you scratching your head a little bit.
Right.
Well, I live in a world where the internet has sort of removed the need for print almost entirely, And well, I mean, it is what it is, but the books that you guys publish we're talking about a different level of research and a different level of production values, and they're very slick and they're beautiful. So I can see why the internet has not negative, or has the internet affected the way that you guys do business?
Well, yeah, I think it has. I mean, it's affected every publisher. It's kind of decimated the magazine industry, unfortunately.
Right.
And it's definitely impacted book publishers as well. I think that maybe a little lesser for an illustrated publisher like we are, because as you say, there's a lot more to the visual aspect of the books is as important as the words. So yeah, I mean, it has affected a book publishing. I mean, both positively and negatively, right? Mm-hmm. Just like it's affected most any other art form. So I think that we've sort of refocused our publishing in terms of what we publish and the kinds of books we publish. For example, we still publish how-to books and practical books, but not to the degree that we once would have. And I think that a lot of that practical how-to information has migrated online kind of brilliantly even on an enthusiast basis. So, if I want to put a alternator in my GTI, I mean, I can find any number of videos or words to tell me how to do that online. I almost don't need a traditional manual anymore. So, it's definitely had an impact on that kind of publishing, I think. Mm-hmm. But, our focus is a little more toward the the coffee table book, historical book, and
mm-hmm.
more visually oriented.
Right. Ben, didn't you have a GTI?
I did. I used to. Yeah, I had a 2002, and yeah, that was a fun little car.
Yeah, I had a 2001.
A little bit of a bear to work on sometimes,
Yeah, mine was. I loved mine. I think I don't know. I fixed a lot of things on
it. Which engine did you have?
It was the 1.8 turbo.
Yeah, that's what I had too. I did the cam belt and water pump service myself a few times, and that's something I never want to do again.
No, that's pretty bold.
Ben does not shy away from these things. He's actually rebuilding a Lotus 2+2 as we speak.
Oh wow. Okay. No, that's what I think that's it, but Ben, isn't it different whether when you're working on something that you don't have to rely on every day?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, and that's a little hilarious too, because I used to have a Turbo Esprit, and there were some times when that car got me to the office in the morning when the GTI just couldn't be bothered to not be broken.
Yeah, I think I was on a very close relationship with my Volkswagen mechanic by the time the GTI departed my garage.
Too funny. Is this the GTI that you sold to Steve?
It is, yeah. I had fixed everything by the time Steve bought it. I think he had very little trouble with the car by the time I was done with
it. Too nice. Excellent.
It's that thing. It's like you love the car and you have to dump all this money into it because you're having issues with it, and you come to this point where you do that last repair and you can't take it anymore. And so when you really should keep the car because you fixed everything, you get rid of it because you hate it so much.
Right.
Oh yeah.
That's right.
So it was a brilliant acquisition for Steve.
We've had that discussion online ourselves, actually, because people ask, how do I know when I should get rid of my car? And
you'll just feel it.
Yeah.
In your wallet.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you can pour money into it and continue to pour money into any kind of car to keep it on the road. But I think the answer that we finally agreed upon was it's time to get rid of the car when you no longer love the car.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you go on YouTube, if you need a few minutes of musical interlude, find a song by the Bottle Rockets called $1,000 Car, and that tells the story.
I'll have to look them up, Ben. So you're also into Ducatis, if I get it right.
Yeah, I like it. I like Italian motorcycles broadly.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah.
And and I do have a particular weakness for Ducatis. Yeah.
So what's in your garage right now?
Well, I don't have much in my garage that actually functions, but I have a couple interesting projects.
Uh-huh.
So I've got a 1970 Mark IIID single Ducati. So that's the 350 single with the Desmo head, and that's one I'm putting together right now. That's my current project bike. Mm-hmm. And then I have a 74 750 GT twin.
Wow.
And then I have an 81 Panta 500.
Nice.
That just to my horror spit out its the retainer on one of the crankshaft main bearing baits.
Whoops.
Oh.
Yeah. So that one's off the road now as well.
Oh goodness. I'm looking at pictures. I confess I'm not the motorcycle enthusiast that you two are, but
yeah. So it's my own little Ducati museum. So I guess it's the first Desmo production they had was the single, and the first twin they had was the GT, and the first belt drive twin was the Panta. So
right.
I can stop now. I don't need anymore.
Well, let's go back to cars then for a minute. What are you driving today, and do you have a project car in there?
I have a Audi Allroad as my daily driver.
Yeah.
I love German cars, and I've sort of lived in the Volkswagen Audi family for a long time. And then I have a non-functioning 49 Crosley Hotshot that I inherited from my dad.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a weirdo little car, but it's pretty interesting car.
Yeah, those are for the listeners who are unfamiliar. Crossley was probably the first American subcompact built in the 1940s in Cincinnati, Ohio, and they are interesting little cars.
Yeah, it was the first production car to have four-wheel disc brakes in 1949, the Hotshot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it had, and I think one of the reasons I like it is it's a small four-cylinder engine with a bevel-driven overhead camshaft.
Right.
So it's like it's sort of an American Ducati.
That's hilarious.
I remember my dad telling me that their engines were a bit problematic due to some pressed steel components that probably should have been cast or something like that. It was a long time ago that
that was their first engine was what they called a Cobra engine, and that was an acronym for copper brazed. So they kind of laid up sheets and then essentially soldered the whole mess together and then made it. That was their crankcase, and it didn't work very well. And so they subsequently went to a conventional iron crankcase. And that's what mine has. Yeah.
If you ever pass through the Cincinnati airport, which is actually in Kentucky, they have a pair of beautiful Crossleys on display down by baggage claim.
Oh, really?
There's also one on a stick outside a gas station near the airport in New Orleans.
Ben, how do you know these things?
Just from my travels. I see these things as I travel around.
Or more importantly, I should ask, how do you remember these things?
Well, I'm a car nut.
Right. Yeah. No. Well said.
So that's yeah. I guess in the automotive arena, I guess I expend a little more energy on the motorcycle side.
Yeah. Yep. Understood. What advice would you have for podcasters like us? We're small, we're trying to grow, we're trying to do different things. And in my wildest dreams, we would try to parlay the thing about cars into some kind of video or television presence. But we're all otherwise occupied with jobs and stuff like that. How would a group like us make that jump?
Yeah. But I guess I wouldn't have any super sage advice because I don't live in the podcast world too much. I listen to them and I enjoy them, but I think you're certainly halfway there just because you're genuine enthusiasts, right? And that's the key to, I think, succeeding in anything is to have a genuine and authentic interest in it, and not, it's something that you're pursuing because you have an innate passion for it, not because you think you'll make a buck or something.
Right.
And I think the other thing is too, what interests me with the automotive world, and this is sort of, I guess, changed for me over the time that I've worked at Motorbooks, is that, I think you start out with or at least I did start out with a fixation and a fascination on the equipment, the objects of your fetish, if you will. But over time, you never learn everything, but you learn a lot. And I think at least for me, over time, I became, from a historical perspective particularly, I guess, I became more interested in sort of why the thing is as it is, why the object is as it is, and what the culture is that surrounds the object. And so I think that, what I find really appealing about the transportation world broadly, but cars and motorcycles in particular, is just all of the different subcultures that surround it and that feed from it and grow out of it. And so ultimately it rolls back around to people and their ideas and how they execute those ideas and how they force them into being, sort of oftentimes against odds. I think that's where the really interesting stories are. There's a show I listen to on NPR that I like a lot called How I Built This. Are you guys familiar with that?
Yeah. I think I've heard it once or twice. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of like they'll talk to typically an entrepreneur, and it might be someone who started a company that makes something very everyday and sort of borderline mundane, or it might be someone that makes something really unusual and exotic, but it's really that person sharing their creation story. And I think those kind of stories are fascinating because especially if they're making an object, but even if they're offering a service, I think that creation story and how the object is the reflection and the culmination of that is really interesting. And I think that lots of times, that gives you a deeper understanding of why something is as it is, whether it's a hamburger that you're buying or a, Ferrari that you're driving. And I think, maybe looking for those opportunities and focusing on those kinds of stories, because it gives you a really compelling focus to whatever you're talking about.
Right.
There you go. That's my soapbox.
It's a good soapbox. Ben, you got anything else?
Not right off the top of my head. I'm just kind of browsing the titles right now while I was listening to you guys and just kind of going, ooh, ah.
Right, right. And Zach, we'll definitely be turning folks towards quartoknows.com/motorbooks, where they can find a couple links leading to your books catalog and your blogs, which I'm going to enjoy reading that this evening.
I think too. I think really, and the books are sold. They're sold everywhere that we can sell them, and and anything that's on our site is is on Amazon. It's probably on bnn.com, and there's a number of it really. And if you still, and I would encourage anyone to continue going to bookstores because we need them, and they need you.
Yeah.
And there's some great. There's Pastiner's AutoZone in Detroit is a great independent transportation bookstore. There's AutoBooks, AeroBooks in Burbank, and there's others around the country. And and you'll find transportation books, the odd transportation book, in in just about any independent bookstore. And I think that continuing to go to bookstores, whether it's Barnes and Noble or Books A Million or your local independent, is something that everyone should do because
yes,
we don't want them to go away.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what about you guys? I mean, I confessed my automotive afflictions and what I had in my garage. What do you have in your garage?
Ben, you go first.
Okay. Well, let's see. My daily driver is a 2013 Mazda 3. Kind of an appliance, but I like it. Of course, I have the Lotus. It's a 1970 Plus 2, which is the sort of bigger hardtop sort of touring variant of the Elan.
Yeah.
And then I've also got my motorbike is a 2012 BMW R1200 GS.
Nice. I have an F800 GS.
Yeah, I've been a BMW guy since I started riding. It's all I've owned, believe it or not. My first bike was a K100 RT, if you can believe that. But yeah, I've been active in the club, and then my wife's car is a 2018 Challenger.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Does she let you drive it?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Oh, that's good.
It's not the V8, it's just the V6, but it's still a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Probably better balance than the V8.
I don't know. I look at it and it's pretty, but and I desperately want one at some point. But there's a part of me that's like, I want to drive the V8. but yeah, the 6 I think is much better suited for the purpose. I think Zach is right.
Well, it depends on what your purpose is. If it's a daily driver, the 6 probably is better. But, there's a lot of V8s out there, a lot of enthusiasts, and they love to just go screaming with them.
Exactly. So in my garage, I've only got 2 things, one of which I'm about to get rid of. I had an old Mazda 6, which has been thoroughly beaten up by no fault of mine. My wife says I should put a "kick me" sign on it. And in the last 18 months, the car is involved in 3 different accidents.
Oh, geez.
But it still runs. It still runs really, really well. It's a 2005 Mazda 6, but I'm about to liquidate it because I bought my sister's 2005 Honda Accord, which, as Ben says, is a total appliance. And and if I ever find my next income, because I am between jobs at the moment, so if I ever find any money again, then we'll go car shopping. But until then, I will be driving the Honda.
Yeah, well, and I think and Ben, your Lotus may be the same situation, but any of the bikes I have are a function of decades of reeling them in, and I certainly I wish I had the income to buy collector vehicles in the current market. But I have collector vehicles only because I acquired them a long time ago.
Right. Well, the nice thing about this Lotus is, if you were to go for the regular Elan, the little small 2-seat open top one, you'd be looking at multiple times what this Plus 2 costs. Yeah. It's weird. It's a really rare car. It's got the same stuff under the skin, but it goes for a whole lot less money. And I got a real bargain on it. I got it from a personal friend who needed money and wanted to keep it in the family. But, there's those decades. I mean, this car is 50 years old as of right now. There are decades worth of previous owner bodges that I have to fix in it, things like that,
Yeah, I think those are kind of underrated. I like the look of those cars a lot, and
Yeah.
yeah, they're just that's the nature of I think of the collector world is that I mean you only have to look at 911 price escalation over the last 5 years, and
Right.
once some segment of the hobby decides that deems something the it vehicle, then there goes the opportunity for the rest of us.
And but my dad used to be into back when he was around. My dad was into Sunbeams, and it was hilarious because the Sunbeam was probably 10 times rarer than the MG, but the MG sold for several times what the Sunbeam did.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's what people wanted.
Yeah, no, there's a bit of a herd mentality on some of that stuff,
right,
for sure. And but a lot of those cars are brilliant and
sure,
deserve their valuations.
Well, there are guys in the Lotus forums who are regularly saying, "I sold my Porsche because after driving the Lotus, I'm just not interested in the Porsche anymore."
Now that's funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, Zack, we're running out of time.
Okay.
I got to thank you for taking the time to sit and talk with us today.
Sure.
And I hope we can do this again sometime in the future.
Yeah, good. Well, I appreciate you guys supporting Motorbooks, and we'll keep working on making books that hopefully are of interest to enthusiasts, and appreciate your paying some attention to us and keeping an eye on the books.
Yes, sir. We'll do that. And then thanks for doing such excellent work. And to our friends, as always, you can find us on the internet at thethingaboutcars.com. And if you want to check out the Quarto catalog, as we've said, go to quartoknows.com/motorbooks, and you'll find links there to both the catalog and the blogs. And as Zack has said, maybe you'll find us in the Barnes & Noble somewhere.
Or Amazon, or any other fine bookstore.
Any other fine bookstore, exactly. Thanks again, Zack.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Thing About Cars. We'll see you on the road.